and welcome to today's series of My Unstoppable. And I have a lovely guest for you today called Matthew, who I'm going to bring up for you.
Hello.
Oh! So thank you guys for joining us. I did close my window because it was because of the noise, but I'm going to open it again because now I feel very warm. How are you, Matthew?
I'm very well, thanks, Julie. You?
Good. Yes, I'm much better now, thank you.
Good.
Now that you've appeared. Right, so Matthew, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone, please?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Matthew J, and I am a fulfillment coach and mentor.
And who do you work with?
Who do I work with? Right now, I'm specialising in 35 plus males who have experienced divorce situations and are just struggling with a few elements in their lives to help them move forward, to create the life and opportunity that they really want and actually deserve.
Amazing. Sounds really good. So before we get really into the interview, Matt, as you probably know from the ones that you've watched before,
yes.
I always ask all my guests on my Become Unstoppable series, of course, what does becoming unstoppable mean to you?
Here's the question. And I just want to say, I love what you're doing with these. I think they're great. Really exciting. So very well done. And yes, so in answer, I would say, from my point of view, it's digging deep and understanding that you have an inner strength that perhaps you didn't know that you had before. And that can come from various circumstances like life challenges, work situations, your own awareness or perhaps even lack of awareness at times, and also mentorship, being around people that have more experience than yourself and are able to point out elements that you can really help and take forward that you perhaps don't appreciate that you already have yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we met on one of those such mentoring programs, didn't we? Just so happened to be in Thailand, darling, didn't it?
I know. Guess us. Yeah, we met poolside, I seem to remember as well.
We did. Yeah, we did. And it's funny because I don't know about you, but I have to really, I go, it wasn't a holiday, it was work. And they're like, yeah, right. And you've just really, set that up for me now. So thanks very much from the poolside. But yeah,
that was what started, so there you go.
It was though, you're right. But that trip was amazing because it was all around, more mindset stuff for us all, but it was also about meeting new people. And, we wouldn't be doing this right now, would we, if we hadn't been on that retreat. And we both have made some really good friends from that. And I think that's really important. It's about when you join different communities, like for me, before I started embarking on my journey that I'm on now for the last couple of years, I heavily invested in my self-development. So I've got groups there, like my therapy groups. I still do therapy training. I'm training all the time. I've got about 3 different courses on the go. But within each of those, I've got my individual groups of people that are amazing because we're all like-minded and we all kind of have got that same sort of feel about us. And then from the business side, we've got all that training from our business mentors as well. And again, there's another great community, isn't there, of like-minded people.
Yeah.
And
well, absolutely. I think well, we all did. Let's be honest. All 20 attendees went on a real journey of discovery over that week. And I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely sure what I was letting myself in for.
Me neither.
It's not an experience that I've ever, gone for in the past. So it was very much a blank canvas and just letting go and just going with the flow. And I'm so glad I did because, we have our relationship and, well, as I said to the group a while back when most of us were together again, there's definitely been a bond that's been formed through that experience because it was hard. you know.
Yeah, there was times when it was hard, honest, wasn't there? When we were in the pool or feeding elephants and stuff like that. But it was.
No, I mean, it tested everyone, didn't it? You know, and that was one of the main remits of what the guys were doing. You know, Liam and Adam and Jim was really pushing us, and kind of relating back to what I just said in answer to your question is actually going inside yourself and digging that bit deeper. Sometimes it's like, you know, the uncomfortable truths or, you know, those challenges. I mean, you mentioned it already, Julie, like mentoring. I have 3 mentors, kind of 4 in reality, but 3 officially. And you know, one of them, Nick Starr, he always says, nothing grows in the comfort zone. You've got to push through that, and that's very much what the retreat was about.
Yeah, you have to be uncomfortable to move forward, don't you? And this is why many of us get stuck in our lives, is that it's that fear of making a difference and that fear of feeling a little bit uncomfortable. But actually, Nick Starves, very smart guy. He is that Nick Starves, very smart guy. You put me off now. You put me off in flow. Yeah, it's stepping outside of your comfort zone, isn't it, to make sure that you are growing, because if you don't, you stagnate. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people, because it feels a little bit uncomfortable. They just go, no, I'm not doing that. But once you feel the fear and do it anyway, as the book went, you do a little bit and then you go, actually, I survived that. Nothing terrible happened. So next time something else happens, you push yourself a little bit more. Oh, actually, nothing happened there either. And actually, I started to enjoy it. Yeah. And a good example of, we were talking about this, weren't we, about the Instagram lives. And I said, I kind of started doing this by accident, really. I'm not even sure. I can't even remember how it came about. And then I did it once and I was like, oh, actually, I didn't mind that. That was okay. And then I did it again and I thought, do you know what? This is fun. And then now I've got my weekly sessions when and where did that come from? But the old me of a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have done that.
No, this is it. And I mean, you and I know from, the chats we've had, we've both been through some challenging personal experiences, and you get to a point where you make a choice, don't you? You either move forward or you stagnate or, go backwards potentially. And it is very much about just having that choice moment and choosing to take that step outside of that comfort zone. That is a good term of phrase, because a lot of people I see and talk with, there is that fear factor, and I don't believe in no fear. I think we all need fear and an element of stress in our lives, but obviously it needs to be balanced. And I think when you recognize fear, and I mean, you helped me through one of my biggest fears, which was very personal, deep water. I came up to you on that boat and said, I'm going to do this. I'm a little bit unsure because I'm not a great swimmer, but I want to experience this and I need to, and I'm going to. But I needed that companionship just from someone who's a lot more experienced and able to say, well, it's all going to be fine. This is how you do it. And I remember you, Dan, and Jim were just, ecstatic and for me, which is lovely. And I think what we both are doing in our lives for other people is very rewarding, not just for us, but for those individuals and those groups. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I forgot about that. That was quite funny, because I didn't tell you at the time that I wasn't very good at it either. I mean, I had done it, but I was like, come on, it'll be fine. Yeah. And then we dragged poor Dan in, who I didn't know till afterwards had never done it either. So I kind of fixed you both all in one go.
So the three amigos who are all quite nervous in the water actually.
He's going, I've never done it before either. I went, oh, sorry.
Yeah, but you know,
it worked,
that's
right?
it.
It worked out in the end, and that's what it was all about. And next time, yeah, sure, you might still need a little bit of a helping hand, but you won't go, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that, because you've done it.
Exactly.
You know? And although that was lovely, and we saw some fish, there's way better places than that with the fish, right? That was just like probably 1% of a decent snorkel, I would say. So there's so much more to see as well. And you pushed yourself through that fear. And then we did a lot of that in Thailand as well, didn't we? Like breaking balls and arrows and all that stuff. So that was really good fun. And it just shows you that once you do get in that mindset of wanting to change, then you absolutely can change. And that's what I love. I was having this conversation this morning, actually, with a fellow therapist of mine. And we were asking each other why we got into all of this in the first place. And and what do we sort of get out of it? And it was very much, it's having, like you said there, it's about when I see my clients flourishing, and I do, I feel like a proud mum sometimes. I'm like, oh my God. And I was at the hairdresser's only last week, and one of the clients that I've got, her mum was in there, and she was saying to the hairdresser, oh, I just thank Julie so much for what she's done for my daughter. And that was kind of coming back second, third hand.
Yeah.
And it was like, wow. I mean, what other job can you do where you can really make such changes to people's lives?
This is it. This is it. And I think you touched upon it just before as well, in that using the deep water analogy that we were just talking about and taking that forward as well, is it opens up a whole new world, literally, physically, emotionally, and what you're just talking about, how you are positively changing lives for the better, because an individual has come to you and said, I'm a bit stuck. That's incredible. And I've coached hundreds of people in very challenging environments, on mountains, and within a short space of time, you see them go from doing something that they know they can do to a basic level, perhaps, but then taking that next step, and all of a sudden they're just jumping up all these different levels, and you're seeing the confidence, the understanding grow in them. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
And that was snowboarding, wasn't it? You're talking about there.
That was a large part of my snowboarding.
But that's
definitely
very much about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, isn't it? When you're going to just throw yourself off some cliff somewhere. I mean, you need a little bit of mindset positivity to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Because everything's going in your mind and body, don't do this. This is crazy. You're going to hurt yourself. So, but I do think that relates back to what you and I are both doing. And because you have to, it's very easy to find a reason not to do something. And I think we're all guilty of it at times, no one, but when you make that choice and you experience it, like you just said it, Julie, is something new, that becomes a very powerful moment. And one thing that I'm a big fan of, I'm certain it was Shakespeare who coined the phrase, life is a series of moments put together. That's kind of paraphrasing it. But I've always held on to that, the importance of the moment. Because those moments establish who you are, and you can share those. And that is, again, a very powerful thing. Like you, me, Dan and Jim stepping off the back of a boat in the Thailand beautiful waters. And we didn't need to be in Thailand to do that, I guess. But that circumstance and the situation and the moments in which we were.
In that time, in that moment, didn't it? Yeah, and I think that's an important point, actually, because whatever our age is, obviously as we get older, we've got more and more experience. And sometimes it's easy to look back and have regrets, but I don't think we should ever have regrets, because that's what makes us who we are, isn't it? That experience, you know, that's what we learn from. I mean, don't keep making the same mistakes over and over again, because that's silly. But you know, but look at what you're doing. Look back and go, do you know what? If I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have gone down that route. It's very like that sliding door moment, isn't it? Where, you know, you make one decision, and I mean, Matthew probably won't mention this, but I'm going to briefly mention it because I just think it's an amazing story. So, like, when I met Matthew in Thailand, and he was like, "Oh yeah, just, you know," we were talking just like a little bit about who we are, and we end up here and all that kind of stuff. And then he just casually mentioned about the fact that he shouldn't really be here, and he actually died. So I was like, oh, right, yeah, my story's nothing like that. No, mine's quite dull and boring. No. And I know a little bit about his story now, and I'll let you tell him very briefly if you want to. You don't have to. But if ever there was a pinnacle moment in your life, that has to go down as one of them, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And what I would say is everyone has stories, and there's no top trumps of whose stories beats the other, you know.
Says you, who's got one of the biggest stories. So I was with Matthew on speaker school training, right? And one of the part of that is like different sections, right? You have to, you talk about your story. Yeah. And we all did ours, and everyone's going, oh, yeah. And then Matthew comes on, and we're like, you actually won an award, if I recall, as well, for the best story of the day, when it was something. Yeah. Yeah. So go on, in a sentence, give a quick overview of what happened, if you want to.
Quite emotional. No, absolutely. No, it's important to be open, and you know that's kind of what I'm doing. So in mid-January, I had a very important thing that I was doing, and I got the call that my father had passed away from his cancer. He was in a hospice. And for the 2 weeks prior to that date, I'd been visiting, obviously, and being there with him. And it was very hard, very traumatic. Not an easy passing, not that any passing ever is, but it was a tough one to watch. And then 6 weeks later, I collapsed on my kitchen floor. I had a heart attack followed by 2 cardiac arrests.
It's the snowboard. Just have one, could you? No, you had to have 2.
Snowboarders, go big or go home, you know. It's and they were then later diagnosed as what they call STEMIs, which are the most fatal cardiac incident you can have. So I was resuscitated at scene, thankfully, and you know I will always be grateful to my ex-wife for that. You know, she's incredible, and she was very traumatized at the time. And yeah, I went blind. I came around to semi-consciousness. I lost my sight. I wasn't sure if I was alive or dead, you know, and actually one of my first thoughts was, actually, am I going to see Dad again? And I'm not overly religious. I'm still sort of figuring that out, but it was a very weird time. And then I woke up to a paramedic in my face. You know, thankfully they didn't give up on me. They had to really work hard to stabilize me. And after another hour on the kitchen floor, I was loaded into an ambulance, guided the ambulance to the hospital.
Did you?
And then was rushed into cardiac critical care, into operating theatre, had an amazing cardiologist and team, and they were like generally looking down at me going, what the are you doing in here? Like, you don't, you know, we don't understand why you're here. It's like, well, you're in the right place now. And then what he thought would be a 40-minute procedure, which is normally how it goes for him, turned into 3 hours and a 7% chance of survival. And I was conscious all the way through, talking with them while I was laid out on the operating table, because they kind of need that communication flow. And yeah, it's pretty hardcore.
Wow. See, I told everyone, didn't I? How are you supposed to trump that when you're going, yeah, I lacked confidence a little bit when I was like,
well, it was, you know, the weird thing was it completely shifted something in my brain. And, you know, I was discharged I always remember, you know, when I was discharged from hospital, I was in a wheelchair because I could barely stand. There were some complications which were then later sorted out, which is great. But it, you know, it was very physically and emotionally painful time, you know, with what then happened as well. So, but just that process I went through, you know, I got home, and sadly the marriage broke down. It's been a sort of ongoing situation, but my wife decided, you know, it wasn't to continue. And I just made that choice, is that, well, I'm going to continue. Like, you know, literally felt like I'd lost a lot in life. Not in a, oh, poor me, just reality of the situation, you know, three big things, three huge events, essentially, within the space of 3 months.
And you could have caved in that, couldn't you? You could have done poor me, poor me, poor me. So what do you think made you not do that and to go the route that you chose?
So, to be honest with you, that's still a question that, well, I know the answer, but I do sometimes revisit that, because obviously, you know, as human beings, we have strengths and weaknesses. And I did have a couple of weak moments where I felt, can I actually go on? You know, I've, like we just said, you know, been in snowboarding at a very high level for many, many years. I do a lot of activity stuff, outdoorsy. My interests are all very active and sort of fitness orientated without being a gym bunny. And so to go from that situation to not being able to stand upright in the shower and literally having to teach myself to walk out in the countryside where we lived at that point, that was a real challenge. And I think what it was I just felt like I've got more to give. And I'll tell you what, that moment actually came from the NHS recovery period, when, because after a period of time you're able to attend cardiac physical exercise classes, and they push you, and they've got a really,
the point, isn't it? That's the point.
Yeah, well, this is it. And they've got a slightly dark sense of humour, because the playlist that is playing is all like Heart of Glass. I'm trying to, you know, and it's like, guys, is this really appropriate? But I did a series of those, and that was really good, because it puts you in a community, like we're saying, like-minded people. You know, a lot of those people have not really formally exercised in terms of cardiac routines. They push you. Like, if you're doing a routine and you're able to hold a conversation, you're not working hard enough. And you know, you really need to get past that fear again of, oh, I've just had a cardiac incident, you know, and there are various versions that they could be, and people are hypersensitive. You do become a bit hypersensitive, I think.
You're probably thinking, is this exercise, should I be doing this, right?
Yeah.
Is this going to make me have another one, or?
Yeah, exactly. At least it's surrounded by specialists. But
you had to put the thing was, though, Matthew, you had to put your trust in them, didn't you? Because you were trusting them that they were guiding you in the right direction. And that's a big thing to do as well, isn't it? That faith. And I think that's what we do with our clients as well, isn't it? They put their faith in us.
Yes.
And trust us.
And it's a world in which you're unfamiliar with. You know?
But what's the same, though, is in your recovery, though, they could help you. They could facilitate it. Yeah. But it was down to you, right?
Yeah.
You had to put the effort in. It was you that had to decide whether you wanted that extra push.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
That's the same in what we do with our clients, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, working with my clients, right, I can facilitate this process for them, but they have to really, really want it. I can help them get fantastic results, but they have to really, really want it.
Yeah.
And that's the same for you, isn't it, with yours?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. The spark. I always say the spark has to come from within.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter if it's you, me, you know, X, Y, or Z, speaking to an individual. If that desire to improve rather than simply prove themselves isn't there, it's going to be a tough journey. And because, you know, my click moment with that was the last class and being asked by the nurses to speak to the rest of the class, not realizing that I'd been inspiring and motivating the rest of the class. I just kind of, you know, been focused on my recovery and being a participant with the group and supporting other members of the group. But that moment was incredibly powerful for me, and it was in some ways a very you know, passing moment, but it was still a moment because they asked me to stand up and speak to the class, and then half the class wanted to have one-to-ones, and I left that building thinking, my goodness, that I can actually give back. It's not about just self, it's about the bigger picture. And investing in myself in terms of, you know, sorry, it's a long-winded answer to your question. It was,
I can't even remember what my question was now. It's such a long time ago.
What made me want to go forwards rather than backwards. And it was that moment of realizing that I actually still had a life ahead of me. You know, I'm of a certain age, and age is just a number, so that shouldn't come into it. But with everything that was going on in my life, I just kind of felt like my world had been like put in the washing machine and put on a spin cycle forever. I mean, and
in your defence, it had.
Yeah.
You can't go, oh yeah, well, pull yourself together, mate. You know,
no,
not much has happened. I mean, that was a lot. That's such a lot. I mean, to have that physically going on in your body, and I'm not going to mention it now, but obviously I know a little bit about the other stuff that's going on in your life. So to have all that going on, nearly die, and then to survive, but then have to go through that time of rehabilitation to actually walk again. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, and it was just, I found there were like interesting little elements to it that and it might sound a bit weird, but I remember saying I had an assessment a few weeks later after the class is finished, and I said to Nurse Fiona, my cardiac nurse at the time, Fiona, when do I get my body back? Because I lost a lot of weight, and when this all happened, I was 11.5 stone, and I think at this point I was barely 10 stone, and I'm sure that was partly psychological as well as, you know, physical stuff. And she just looked at me and she said, Matthew, don't, this is your new body, but please put on like another 6 pounds, you know, then we'll be okay. But I kind of embraced that, and this is going to sound awfully shallow, but I got, woohoo, I get to go and buy a whole new wardrobe. You know, it's
so
like,
really, you've gone through a whole new identity then, haven't you?
Yeah, oh, definitely. And it's been weird. And again, without sort of sounding a bit funny about it, but, you know, I think it's important to be open and honest. I sort of looked at myself literally in a mirror. And you just go, well, everything's changed now, Matthew. And physically, in some small ways, you can see changes. So now you just have to choose, adapt, and have a real positive twist on this, or, you know, sink back, retreat into your comfort zone, do what you know, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because there genuinely isn't. However, I would always come back to the whole improve versus prove. I genuinely don't believe. My dad used to say, when he passed, he was early 80s, but in his head he used to say, like, he still felt like he was 40 something, you know? And I don't think that's a bad thing, because it just encourages the openness to learn. And I genuinely, like, it's a cliche, I know, but change is good.
Change is good. Yeah. And I spent a lot of my corporate career, I think, fearing change, because, well, I worked in a team called Change Management, which is a little bit of a clue there, but well, I wasn't afraid of it, I suppose, but I probably wasn't actually, because I was used to it in that environment. But so many people were, you know, as soon as there was something else going on or another company took us over or whatever, everyone would be talking, oh my God, it's going to be the worst thing.
Yeah.
But it isn't, right? So I got made redundant in the lockdown. I mean, at the time, it wasn't ideal. And I remember having quite a few moments really, like, you know, 54 years of age, well, 52 I think I was then, in the middle of the pandemic, and now I haven't got a job and I'm the breadwinner. Yeah. A little bit, you know, squeaky bum time for the beginning bit, but yeah. I didn't really like the job anyway, right? So once I got over myself, I was like, do you know what? Actually, this is a really good thing for me. And a friend of mine was encouraging me to start my business up, which is what I started doing. Then I started on my journey of retraining. So I started to train on NLP Master. Then I came across Recipe and the rapid transformational therapy. And now, I carried on working for a couple of years while I was building it up. I won't lie, it hasn't been easy. But now I get to do the stuff we were talking about earlier, with transforming people's lives, with making them unstoppable, which is my tagline, right? But to be honest, I probably would still be at the same place. If not, I might have changed and gone into another very similar place and not really liked it, because my passion wasn't there. That wasn't what I liked to do. No. And I hadn't liked that for years, but because you get yourself in a situation, don't you, where I was earning good money, and it's like, well, you know, I still want to have my nice holiday, you know, and you get caught up in that bubble. But Julie wasn't happy. I hadn't been happy for a long, long time. I was just doing everything for everybody else and not doing it for me. And then throwing some menopause into the remit as well. It was like, I turned into this monster woman, and it was like, what the hell's going on? But the point being, that was a huge change in my life at the time that I think you get annoyed because it wasn't in my control. It wasn't something that I thought, you know what, I think I might leave. But it happened, and I had to embrace it. It's not as dramatic story as yours, obviously, as we know. But for me, that was quite a big part of my life, because suddenly it's all changed. Yes. But what happened to me though, which I love, was the fact that once I got my head around it, I was like, do you know what? I have to go back to work. But I changed my whole mindset around it. Yeah. And I was like, sure, you've got to go back to work. But now I'm going back to work, so I've got money to fund my training and to fund all the business training. Because by that time I'd signed up with Adam with business training. I was doing all this different therapy training, and I'd started practicing on my friends and family, and then I was starting to see results, and I was like, oh my days, this is like mind blowing, so to speak. And then the more I learned, the more I could do, the more I was doing bigger and better things. And then like last year, that was when I was able to leave my job and take that leap of faith, which I'm only 6 months, well, it's July now, isn't it? So it's just starting my 7th month. But I had to take that leap of faith. Otherwise, I would still be juggling all of it and enjoying none of it, really.
Absolutely. So would you say that you're feeling a lot more fulfilled in your life now?
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I still have days because there's so much going on. I've got clients, but you always need to get new clients, right? Because the blessing and the curse for what I do is, right, I get through my clients quite quick, because when I work with them, within 3, 4, probably 6 months at the most, they're done. They don't need me anymore. So I kind of need to have that regeneration of new clients, because I fix them and they're unstoppable, so they don't really need me anymore. Right. So it's doing that, but it's also doing new things. I'm already going for a rebrand. I'm having a new website built already, because I've outgrown my old one, you know. And with the passing of my lovely Luther behind me, that's started the idea about writing the book. So I'm trying to write a book, rebranding, I'm getting a YouTube channel up and running, so I'm trying to do that, trying to get my new clients, doing all my Instagram lives, you know, it's like,
yeah,
I'm always like, but sure, I need to get a bit, well, work-life balance still, but it's a new business, right? I've got to take the rough with the smooth. But to answer your question, I've never been happier. I've never felt so fulfilled. And yeah, to be able to transform people's lives, it's just phenomenal.
So I've got another question for you then, because that's awesome to hear. And I thought you were going to say that, because just from our contacts, I know how alive you are. And I mean, for me, that's what fulfillment or being fulfilled is. It's creating opportunities in someone's life that make them feel alive. And again, come back to Shakespeare's importance of the moments. They all align and take you forward. So I remember when we were together at the retreat experience, you had a few questions, just like I did, and everyone else at different times. But yours was like, well, I don't know if I've got like fears or barriers, because I feel very powerful with the decisions that you made, you know, months ago. But I did watch you like go through those exercises, and there was a transformation for all of us, 100%. And yeah, so I think that experience, you know, made you, me, Ruth, Dan, yeah, everyone, Nana, you know, just look back and go, look at yourself, look in the mirror, and go, actually, I'm here, but I want to be there. You know, how do I get that? And sometimes you can't do it by yourself.
You absolutely can't do it by yourself. I absolutely wouldn't be doing what I'm doing in the position I'm doing it without business coaching, without carrying on with my therapy journey as well, because I'm in a place in my life that I've never been before. And I'm pushing boundaries about my own personal development still. So I've been, you know, learning about energies, intuition and all that. And I've spent 35 years living in here. I struggle with it. I won't lie to you, with the meditations and all this kind of stuff. I struggle with it because my mind, I had doing a beautiful interview last week with Marie with the ADHD discussion. And I'm sure there's elements of my character that's on some sort of spectrum, but you know, so I think it's important that I'm not sitting here like some person that's going, do you know what, I've got it all sus, because I haven't. I think mentally I think I'm fairly stable, but there's still a huge journey that I'm going on, and there's so much I want to learn, and then I can share that with my clients, and that's what I love about it. As I'm learning it, I'm then passing it on. And it's that whole ripple effect, isn't it, that we talk about in the world that we're in. It's I help someone else as well, and then they go and help someone else, and so I'm being helped by trying to pass that on. You know, we'll all give people different nuggets of information, and they will share that with other people.
100%. I mean, I've become, you know, obviously got my 3 mentors, and I've got Jim Francis in my life as well, you know, and he and I are becoming very, very close friends. And it's and you know, he was on the guest speaker on the retreat through the whole time of it, and I knew of him before, you know, because of Adam, Liam, and Nick, but particularly Adam Stott. And I just, you know, Jim and I connected very much because of the Canada background. And it just really went from there. And that, for me, is very important, because, you know, these are all individuals who have earned their stripes, as we would say back at Langley School, where I came from. It's kind of means, it's a term phrase which basically means, you know, you've earned where you are now through hardship. Stripes was just a thing at school. And I guess that just kind of stuck with me, and that's why I felt connected to these individuals, because they've won and lost, you know, and picked themselves up. and move forward and, you know, look at where they are now. Exactly. It's very inspiring.
Yeah. And like you say, like, they've all got really good stories, but it doesn't mean to say that we've all got to have awful stories. And that was one of the things I get asked a lot. I didn't have, because a lot of what goes on for us, right, is about what happens in our childhood, isn't it? Between like 0 and 7, right? But I didn't have a terrible childhood, and so many people say to me that, but why have I got these issues when I didn't have a terrible childhood? And the simple answer to that is, you don't have to have had a terrible childhood. When you're a child of 4 or 5, right, and you've got no logic, you have an argument with your mum or dad or something, and they're really wired, and they go, "Oh, you're an idiot," or something like that. We've all done it, right?
Yeah.
They go, bang, that's that belief. You know, do that a couple of times, and that's embedded. It doesn't mean that your parents were terrible people. It's just that it just means that you caught them on a bad day, and they said something they didn't really mean, but you've taken that belief on board. So you spend the whole of your life believing that you're stupid, or you're not good enough, or something like that, and then that stops you from doing things in later life.
Well, yeah, completely. I mean, you know, I came from a family background that had never experienced winter sports. It was just not on the radar. Like, it was never going to happen, you know, due to various factors. And I found myself at university in Scotland, in Edinburgh, and we had an away retreat kind of thing, actually. So I guess maybe I did do a retreat, but it was an outdoor centre, essentially. And was put on skis, and I was like terrified. It's like, what is this, you know? And but from that, of understanding that I was a terrible skier, I was like a cartoon character, you know, the 4 arms and legs, you know. But I then jumped on a snowboard, stood sideways with my best friend, and that felt natural. So I went with that, and then I have a 14-year career in snowboarding. Actually, the picture above me is from Travis Rice-Signed, who is the world's #1 snowboarder, and I end up in the green room with him at his movie premiere in London, drinking beers, and him, Travis, asking me my opinion on certain bindings. I was like, dude, like, what's going on? You know, that could have not been more of an extreme example of, you know, being told, well, I remember showing this is going to date me now, Jude, VHS videotapes of Bored Stupid, which was a Sunday morning show about snowboarding. And Craig Kelly, got rest his soul, as we lost him a few years ago, very sadly, a very high profile snowboarder. And my mum just saying, I can see the appeal, Matthew. It's freedom, it's environment, you know, you love the outdoors, but I can't believe that you're ever going to be able to do that. Not in a nasty way, but just, you know, from our background almost, I guess, and situation. And I know that she really wanted me to be able to, because I was saying I'm really into this. And then, you know, what?
But she would have been like trying to stop you from doing it, but she would have been doing it for love, wouldn't she? Because she was probably, as a parent, she was probably scared.
Comfort zone.
Yeah, she was scared because it wasn't in her belief system that you could do it.
No.
And we have to go in a minute, Matt, because we have been talking for a while. However, you just reminded me, on Netflix at the moment, Arnie Schwarzenegger documentary. I've read his book, but I've forgotten about most of it. But there's a 3-episode documentary, and watch it. But he is the most inspirational person you're ever going to. And the fact that how because he obviously, you know, he's from Austria, and his parents, he just wanted to get out. But it was the whole thing about winning Mr. Universe and the Olympics and all that. But what he did was, and this is why I liked it as well, because it was all about, he visioned it. He visioned himself on that stage. He took out the face of the other person and imagined his face on it. And that's exactly how it came about for him, exactly how he visualized it. And that's what I do a lot of work with my clients. It's visualizing the future, because it's so powerful, and your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's imagination, right? So we spend all our lives using our imagination for the bad, like fear, anxiety, thinking that the world's going to end.
Yeah.
If we can give them one tip today, right? One top tip: start using your imagination for the good, right? Yeah. Use it. And that's what I love about kids, and we stop kids from doing it. You know, like when they go off and they're playing and they're just using their imagination, and they go, oh, I want to I'm going to be on a show. Oh, don't be so silly. Go and get yourself a proper job. You know, start dreaming. Start using your imagination now, and because that's how you get where you want to be. You visualize where you want to be, and you go in that direction. Definitely. And the more you do that, repetition, your brain will do it, and it'll think you've already done it, and it takes it as a given, and it will come up. It will happen. Yeah,
definitely. I would say regrets are the ghosts of the decisions you didn't take. Right? Yeah. You know, and it's exactly what you just said, you know, and it is stepping out, and it's hard, you know, and it is scary. It's scary. Like, you know, there's even times now, and you're like, oh, should I?
But you have to listen to the language you use, though, don't you? Because if we say it's going to be hard, well, guess what? It's going to be hard. Yeah. But if you say something like, I want to go for that job interview. There's a job interview, right? And you go, well, I'll go for the interview, but I doubt I'm going to get it because it's going to be really hard and they're going to ask me loads of questions. I'm like, well, guess what? You ain't going to get it, right? But, oh my God, I'm so excited for that job interview. Oh my God, it's going to be so exciting because they're just going to throw questions at me. And I'm going to get that job because that's got my name on it. And, you know, visualize yourself doing it. And it's all that kind of stuff. And you have to push yourself. You have to, because otherwise you're just going to stay small and not do anything in your life. Yes, absolutely. You've got to embrace the challenges, because the challenges are the reward. The rewards come, and I'm not talking like you know, financial, material. I'm talking, you know, as a human being, as a person, and you know, that other stuff can be there. But that was one of my realizations as well, like the big house in the country, that wasn't the thing. You know, the car, the certain elements of my life, which have drastically changed now. But actually, I bumped into someone yesterday who's known me through a lot of this, and he actually said, I can't believe, but I'm so pleased to see how centered and balanced you are, Matthew, and it is so inspiring. And he was talking about his customers, clients, who are slightly different to mine, but actually he was talking about divorcees and male divorcees, and just saying they really need what you're doing, so thank you. And it's lovely. I mean, he knows what, you know, I've personally experienced. So he's like, it's so lovely to see that, you know, although everything's changed in many ways, you're here. Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. And so just before we go then, Matthew, I mean, obviously when I post this out, they can see your Instagram details on there, but where else can they find you, and what would you like to tell them what you're up, you know, what you're up to in terms of your sure. So I can be contacted through obviously Instagram. You can DM me there, also Facebook and Mathew Jeffery, and I pop up if with, you know, fulfillment on there. And I also have my business email address, which is matthewj@fulfillment.com. So you can email me there. I got my .com. And there'll be a Facebook page, a group page coming in, because I got a new program which I'm really wanting to promote to help people out there with. So there'll be a dedicated Facebook page to that, which will be Fulfilled Warriors. So so that's all coming. Yeah, so please get in touch. What am I doing up to next? Obviously working with clients. I'm pursuing my passion for expert speaking. It's just something I really love doing, and it gives me a great platform to positively positively pass on messages of robustness and resilience to people. And I've been asked by a number now of mental health and well-being organisations and charities to come and speak for them, which is lovely. And I'm really keen to do that, and you know, just give back to them
because they're charities. So it's a way that I can give back to them without, you know, it being more than that, you know, and really pass on to their audiences.
Amazing.
You know, it's okay to not be okay, and there is a brighter future ahead.
And I know that you're going to be doing more and more amazing stuff in the future. And I will watch that, obviously, because I'm friends with you, so I'll see what you're up to. So that's all good. So thank you for coming on. I hope you've enjoyed it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. I loved it.
And then for me, obviously, you know who I am. This is my site. I support men and women, and I basically help you to become unstoppable by unleashing your limiting beliefs, identifying them, eradicating them, and replacing them with new empowering beliefs, so you too can become unstoppable. And my program that I offer at the moment is Become Unstoppable in 30 days. So you can't say fairer than that, right? So if you want to change, and you want to change quick, and you want to change that's permanent, then please message me, click in the bio, do whatever you need to do, but just come and see me, and we'll get you to that stage of becoming unstoppable. And thank you guys for joining us, and anyone who watches the video, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on my Become Unstoppable series. Take care.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Julie.
Bye.
Bye.